Nobody expected this level of betrayal, but the trillion-dollar bridge between Washington and Ottawa just snapped in half right before our eyes, and the White House is in a total state of panic. Nobody expected this level of betrayal, but the trillion-dollar bridge between Washington and Ottawa just snapped in half right before our eyes. Minutes ago, a document was signed that changes everything you thought you knew about the North American economy. This isn't just a policy change. This is a structural rupture. It's a divorce that neither side can afford, yet it's happening in real time. Right now, as you're watching this, one of the oldest assumptions in global economics is cracking in public, not quietly, not behind closed doors, in front of cameras, in official statements, and in policy moves that can't be taken back. Donald Trump's tariff pressure didn't just rattle Canada, it pushed Ottawa to say the unthinkable. Out loud, the old relationship is over. And while Washington was still treating this like leverage, Canada was already looking south, reopening interest in trade talks with Mercosur, the South American bloc led by Brazil. This is a relationship that generated more than $1 trillion in trade last year. Hold that number in your mind, 1 trillion, that is the cost of this fracture. Because what is breaking here is not a minor dispute, it is the machinery of a continent, and the reason this matters is simple: when the most integrated trade corridor on Earth starts behaving like a divorce, the shock does not stay at the border. It moves through factories, it moves through prices, it moves through your bank account, it moves through your life. And the part almost nobody saw coming is how fast Canada began preparing for a world with less America in it. Hit subscribe because this is the biggest shift in North American trade since NAFTA, and most people do not know it happened. They think this is just another tariff headline. It is not. It is a total transformation of our world. Before I tell you where this goes, you need to understand what just broke. For decades, the US and Canada built a system on deepening integration. Parts crossed the border, then crossed it again. Energy flowed south. Cars, steel, aluminum, lumber, food, machinery all moved through a supply chain built on trust and predictability. Canada sent about 3/4 of its exports to the United States. This was not just trade, it was dependency dressed up as stability. Then came the shock. Trump escalated tariffs on Canada, treating our northern neighbor like a hostile economic competitor. Mark Carney answered with language leaders usually avoid unless they mean it. He said the United States was no longer a reliable partner. He said there would be no turning back. That is the betrayal at the center of this story. Because Canada didn't just invest money into this system, it built its entire industrial map around it. And now the same alliance that justified those sacrifices is being treated like a pressure point, not by an adversary, by its closest partner. Now here is where this story takes a turn that nobody saw coming, because the reaction was not just anger, it was redesign. First, Ottawa prepared retaliatory trade measures that Carney said would have maximum impact in the United States. Not symbolic, strategic. He also pushed the idea that Canada had to build more capacity at home and diversify its trade. That is step one in a rupture. Absorb the hit, then rewire the system. But it gets deeper. It gets much darker for the American economy. Second, Canada's trade minister confirmed there was appetite on both sides to advance trade talks with Mercosur. That matters because Mercosur is a massive South American bloc involving Brazil, Argentina, and others. And reports indicate this is part of a push to reduce reliance on the United States. Now, not someday. The same report said Canada had already signed a free trade deal with Ecuador and an investment promotion pact with the United Arab Emirates. Each move is more stunning than the last. Third, the numbers started moving. Canadian exports to the US dropped to 68% of total exports in May. That was the lowest share on record. That's it. A country that had spent decades orienting itself around the American market was already showing measurable signs of diversification. Fourth, the blowback started landing inside the United States. General Motors expects tariffs too cost it billions. The Federal Reserve cited a material drop in cross-border tourism, and American consumers were reminded of a very inconvenient fact. Canada is deeply embedded in the supply lines for your cars, lumber, and energy. This is what makes the White House problem so dangerous. Pressure on Canada ricochets back through America's own economy. And then there is the most extraordinary part of all. Canada did not stop at trade. Reports indicate Ottawa wanted to diversify even defense procurement away from the United States. Think about how dramatic that is. A tariff fight over commerce starts bleeding into the strategic architecture of alliance. Carney is openly framing the U.S. relationship as a vulnerability, not a permanent foundation. So what is the climax here? It is that the pressure campaign appears to have triggered a mindset shift. Other customers, other investors, other suppliers. America pushed its closest ally to start preparing for a smaller American role in its economic future. The more Washington tried to tighten its grip, the more Canada looked for the exit. That's it, after Everything you just heard, do you still trust Washington to treat Canada like a long-term partner instead of a bargaining chip? Yes or no? Tell me in the comments right now. Canada supplies 60% of U.S. crude oil imports. It is also the largest foreign supplier of steel and aluminum. That means every disruption carries downstream consequences. More pressure on auto prices, more uncertainty in manufacturing. This is not abstract geopolitics. This is a continental supply chain with your household somewhere inside it. If you believe this story needs to reach more people, hit the like button. This is not total yet, but the language changed. The strategy changed. The numbers changed. History moves exactly like this. First, the confidence breaks. Then the map changes. The era of automatic US-Canada economic trust is over. This is a moment of total panic for those who understand the numbers. We are talking about the end of the post we order in our own backyard. For years, we took the northern border for granted. We thought it was a fixed point. But the map is changing. Every 2-3 minutes, a new supply chain is being rerouted. Every hour, a new agreement is being drafted in Brasilia or Abu Dhabi that bypasses Washington, D.C. entirely. The White House was blindsided because they thought they were the only game in town. They forgot that in a globalized world, if you shut the door, the neighbor will find a new window. This is the reality of the 21st century. No alliance is permanent. No trade deal is sacred. And when $1 trillion is on the line, the desperation becomes dangerous. Consider the ripple effects on the American Midwest, the factories in Michigan that rely on Canadian steel, the construction sites in Florida that need Canadian timber, the power grids in New England that run on Canadian electricity. When Carney says the U.S. is no longer reliable, he isn't just making a political statement, he is signaling to every CEO in Canada that the risk profile has changed. This leads to a massive capital flight. Instead of investing in cross-border ventures, companies are looking toward the southern hemisphere. Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay, these are the new frontiers for Canadian capital. This isn't just a small shift. It's a tectonic movement. The White House's strategy of America first has inadvertently led to Canada anywhere else. The irony is thick. By trying to protect American industry, the administration has potentially starved it of its most essential resources. We are watching the slow-motion car crash of the century. And the worst part? There is no airbag. There is no emergency brake. Both sides have dug in their heels. Trudeau's government is facing its own pressures, but Carney represents a new, harder line. A line that says Canada will no longer be the junior partner that takes the hits and says thank you. They are fighting back with the only thing that hurts, say. Superpower, their absence. If Canada is gone from the American market, who fills the void? Higher-priced alternatives? Or perhaps nothing at all. The scarcity will drive inflation like we have never seen. Think about your monthly bills. Think about the price of a new car. That extra $5,000 or $10,000? That is the price of this trade war. That is the cost of the Carney shift, and it is only getting started. The White House is now scrambling to contain the damage, but the toothpaste is out of the tube. You can't unring this bell. Once you tell your closest ally they are a threat, you can't go back to being best friends the next morning. The trust is gone. The bridge is snapped. And as we look toward the next decade, the map of North America looks less like a unified bloc and more like two competing islands. This is the story they aren't telling you on the evening news. They aren't explaining the depth of the betrayal or the speed of the redirection. They want you to think it's just about lumber or milk. It's about everything. It's about the very survival of the American industrial base. Without Canada, the U.S. economy is an engine running without oil, and as Canada signs deals with South America, that oil is finding new engines to lubricate. The shift is permanent, the damage is done, and the future is uncertain. For the first time in history, the United States is being forced to look at its northern border not as a friend, but as a strategic competitor. And for Canada, the world has suddenly become much larger. They are no longer a satellite of the American economy. They are a free agent, and a free agent with the world's most critical resources is a very dangerous player indeed. The White House's shock is only matched by the growing realization that they may have played their hand too hard. By demanding everything, they may end up with nothing. This is the $1 trillion fracture. This is the moment the map changed. This is the end of an era, and as the dust settles, we have to ask, what comes next? Will we see a total trade blockade? Will the U.S. military be forced to intervene in energy security? The questions are getting scarier by the minute. But one thing is for certain, the bridge is gone, and the water below is rising fast. Every single day, more data comes out showing the decoupling is accelerating. Factories are canceling orders. Shipments are being redirected to ports in the south. This isn't a theory anymore. It's the cold, hard reality of the new economy. If you thought the last 4 years were chaotic, you haven't seen anything yet. The North American divorce is the most expensive breakup in human history, and we are all paying the legal fees. The White House may be blindsided, but for the rest of us, the warnings were there all along. We just chose to ignore them until the bridge finally snapped. Now we are all standing on the edge, looking across a gap that keeps getting wider. The era of the special relationship is buried under a mountain of tariffs and broken promises. Welcome to the new North America. It's a lot colder than it used to be. History doesn't wait for politicians to catch up. It moves with the speed of a signature on a trade pact, and Carney just signed the death warrant of the old alliance. As the sun sets on the old trade routes, a new world order is rising in the South, and America is on the outside looking in.